Hello and welcome. I'm your host, author Ryan M. Oliver, and this is the Mighty Books Podcast. This week's episode features author Amanda Mottola. Amanda is a mom of two young boys, a professional speaker, author of Learning as a Lifelong Journey, Being Your Leader, Overcoming Your Fears, Succeeding in Your Career. She is also a mentor and entrepreneur. She was born in Asunción, Paraguay, and was adopted by an American family. She grew up in Connecticut and has a bachelor's degree from the University of New Haven. Amanda is the CEO of Otroway, a marketing agency based in New England that helps elevate her clients' brand in the community through promotional products, email, and strategic community marketing. She actively pursues ways to help the community from serving in public office to volunteering. Today, Amanda lives in Rhode Island with her husband, Pete, and two sons, Luca and Enzo. Hello again, and welcome back to another episode of the Mighty Books Podcast. Today with me, we have Amanda Mottola. Amanda, how are you doing today?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you for asking. So today we're here to talk about your book. What's the title of your book?
It is called Learning as a Lifelong Journey, Being Your Leader, Overcoming Your Fears, Succeeding in Your Career.
So I'd ask you what it's about, but it sounds pretty, you kind of laid it out there with the title, but can you go into a little more detail just for the viewers?
Yeah, of course. It's as you can tell, a self-development book. And it is, I like to compare it to Chicken Soup for the Soul. So it's a compilation of stories throughout my life that have impacted my journey. So different people I've met, obviously being adopted, it's been a huge part of my life. It's why I'm in the United States. So there's some touches upon adoption, entrepreneurship, family, being a mom, being a leader. So it's a little bit of a hodgepodge and tribute to some of my mentors and the people I admire.
Awesome. And now what made you want to actually sit down and write a book?
I've been wanting to be a published author since I was 9. It
Yeah.
took me a little while.
Yeah.
I thought it was, well, it's hard, as you know, but I thought it was harder than it is. And I kind of talked myself off the ledge of doing it so many times because of money, time, fear of no one caring.
Yeah, sure.
And it took me having my second child, being cooped up on the couch from a second C-section, a little bit bored, and having a little bit more time than I normally do when I'm running my business like at full scale. So
Right.
I, I nursed both my boys, and I'd be up every few hours nursing my son. And we started having Amazon packages mysteriously show up to my doorstep. And my husband is like, "What is going on? What did you order this time?" I was like, I don't know. And I literally didn't remember. So I switched my habits from obsessively shopping for things I don't need to writing every time I was nursing my son. So I would nurse him, he'd fall asleep in my arms, I'd write on my phone, I would do some voice command, and that's how I got it done in 4 months.
Wow. 4
Yeah,
months?
the hustle. I set a crazy goal for myself, getting it done that fast. Yeah.
That's impressive. 4 months. So
Yes.
4 months from no book, just an idea to publish, like, here's in your hand, here's a book.
Well, I met my publishing coach back in August of 2021.
Okay.
It was done December 31st. It was
Holy
fully edited and published by June of
Oh,
that year. So
wow.
it's still an aggressive timeline. There was a little bit of delay with editing because
Sure.
at that point I was back running my business and the kids were crazy.
Yeah, I get
So
it.
and it was also just brutal. I felt like the editing part was way harder. It was just meticulous, and I'm not great with grammar, so just rereading it, I was like second guessing myself, and that's where the
Right.
kind of self-doubt kind of reared its ugly head again. And I was like, oh, should I be doing this? Is this right?
I think everybody goes through that too. But
Oh,
uh your editor does that's their job. That's grammar and all that's their job. My big thing with editing, because it kind of took me a little while too with editing, just because you're like, I've read this so many times now, and it just becomes whitewash. You're like, I'm not sure what's right, what's wrong,
yeah.
if it sounds good, if it doesn't sound good. At some point, you just got to trust that the editor has helped communicate your message appropriately, and then just take that leap.
And for me, new things were happening, right? So one of the organizations I wrote about while it was already sent to print, the executive director left. So I was
Oh,
like, kicking myself, but I didn't know that she was leaving. And there's things like that that popped up during editing where things just change, right? Like facts in the book just were no longer reality because someone left a job or something changed slightly, and Patrick had told me just let it go. He was like, you can't, this is why people do second editions, third editions, because life happens, things
yes, it
change.
does. Yes, it
Yeah.
does. Yeah, you can do as many revisions as you want. You can do 105 revisions over the course of your lifetime, and that's totally cool. But I mean, the big thing is just getting that message out there.
Yeah.
That's a real big thing. Is the bones of it are still good. So, what is the ideal reader for this book?
When I started out writing it, I thought it was for an audience of people who might be struggling. I thought it was for moms because when you become a mom, you lose like a sense of your identity. And being adopted, I felt like that most of my life growing up. So I thought that this book was going to be specifically for people who are adopted or that were in the foster care system, or people who just, experienced having a baby and we're now trying to navigate this new life as mom and who they were and figuring out how that all meshes together. And I found that moms are way too busy to read, not just my book, but any. So when I would go to book events and, coffee shops for signings and bookstores, and I would think, oh yeah, this mom like has to have my book because this will help her if she wants to start like a business like I did after I had my son and got like laid off. This is like the time for her to become like that entrepreneur she's wanted to be if that, speaks to her.
Right.
And probably every mom that walked in was like, "Oh no, I'm just too busy. I can't read another book." Or, "Oh, my brain doesn't even work right now. Mom brain, I can't even think about another thing. I don't have
Yeah.
time." It's like you're just the questions that I got. I was like, "Wow, that is not my audience."
Right.
And those that ended up gravitating to it most were people who were going through a transition in life, but not specifically like being a mom. So a lot of adoptees or people that have foster kids or adoptees have picked it up,
Cool.
and a lot of older people too. Well, I'm in my 30s, so a lot of people that are maybe changing up their careers
Yeah.
or after a long career somewhere, they're looking to start their own business and go that entrepreneurial route. And people who want to level up their life and just
Yeah.
feel that kind of chicken soup for the soul vibe and have some good reads in their life.
Of course. Of course. Well, it's good that it didn't necessarily hit the target you were originally going for, but it's still good that it hit a target audience or an audience, and now you can kind of cater that to it. Do you do any speaking?
Yeah, I spoke at Mohegan Sun back in 2021
Oh,
to a
good.
real estate conference.
Oh,
It
very
was on
cool.
mindset and like motivation. It's funny though, I was so nervous because afterwards I ended up coaching one of the men that were in the room and he ended up leaving his job. So I was like, oh no. But what I said resonated with him and he wasn't following his purpose and what brought him the most joy in his life. Since I found that within mine, I was able to verbalize that out loud and he said, ah, that's me. Like she's speaking to me. And now he's got 200 almost 50,000 followers on Instagram. He's an influencer. He helps people and it took us just chatting a little bit to overcome some mindset struggles
Yeah.
and he's crushing it. He's honestly doing better than I am. So mission accomplished.
Well,
And
that's
I kind of feel I reached a couple people and that's why, God wanted me to do it. I felt I've lost a couple friends to suicide and
sorry.
thank you. It's just hard and I'm sure a lot of other people can relate to that. So part of my calling and writing with this was if I could reach anyone that's struggling, because we all do, right? Like we all have valleys and dark times in our lives and coming off the pandemic, I know a lot of people who struggled and are
Yeah.
still struggling. And if I could reach a couple of them, I feel like that's why I'm supposed to be doing this, not to make a ton of money. If I do some speaking things from it, and also too, it's a little bit of passing down a legacy to my boys.
Absolutely. That's all of that is beautiful answer. All of that is absolutely wonderful. And you have to do stuff, yes, for you, but it's also for the greater good. I mean, it's kind of like,
Mhm.
I'm planting a tree here. I'm not gonna be able to see it in full bloom, but everyone else behind me will. So that's
Yeah,
kind of what I think of with what you're doing with this. That's awesome. You're leaving a message behind for those who maybe later on after, you're gone, your boys are older, they've got families, and they can go, yep, my mom wrote this, and it still rings true today. So
Yeah.
that's awesome. So you mentioned you were adopted. If you don't mind going into a little bit, how has that affected your life?
I would say in a big way. I was adopted by a Caucasian family. I was born in South America, so I'm Hispanic. And there was always a cultural disconnect because I felt just kind of torn in between or stuck in between two worlds, right? Like I knew I was from South America, so I wanted to like speak Spanish and do these things. And I remember one time in middle school, I like slicked my hair to look all like Puerto Rican and like, I was grasping for some sort of connection, right?
Yeah,
Because my only connection was saying that I was Paraguayan and, I'd never been there. And, I was often faced with people saying like, "Oh, you don't look like your family," or "You don't speak Spanish, but you're Hispanic. Oh, how could you be 100% of this?" Because people would get into the conversations where they'd
okay,
say, "Oh, I'm 50% Italian. I'm 25% this." And this is before the days of 23andMe. So it was really hard because my identity and the mystery and the big question mark behind my origin
yeah,
was just always present, like omnipresent. And it was hard for me because I wanted to fit in and feel accepted. I think like we all do. And
mhm,
I think being adopted, it's even more challenging to do that because you don't know your story, right? And even if you ask the questions, you wouldn't get the answers. And I know a lot of my friends who weren't adopted, they weren't asking the questions, but they were
yeah,
secure in the fact that if they did, they know.
yeah,
But they
yeah,
never asked, which for me is like silly. So in my book, I encourage people to really dive into their lineage and explore where their family comes from and the
mhm,
history. I'm big into history, the history of who they are and where they come from. Because many people, that are adopted have access to that. And it's such a beautiful, interesting thing to go on Google Earth now and look and see where your grandfather might have walked in Italy or, wherever. And
yeah,
those are things that people, I think, forget because there's so much digital clutter and life's so fast paced and it's kind of like a me society and people forget to appreciate how they got to where they are because they didn't do it. Their
right.
ancestors.
Seeing where you've come from and maybe what those your folks have overcome, families overcome, to now being where you are now. I've always used it as kind of a form of self-reflection. Like, man, they had it hard, and we've got it pretty nice right now. Just looking at what kind of lifestyle we have, the technology we have, the resources, and you kind of can take that and go when you're having a hard day. Like, well, you know what, uncle or aunt, whoever, or great grandpa, great grandma, whoever, they had to fight, starvation and cold winters because they didn't have heat. I
Yeah.
think I'm okay. I can take a breath and
Yeah.
manage. But it having that connection to your to lineage is, you wouldn't think that being a huge part of your identity, but I've talked to a lot of people and they sure as heck do appreciate knowing that. So do you know all about your parents and everything too? Your
So I ended up with the help of Facebook
okay.
and Google. I ended up finding my family. I had to travel to two different countries. So
Whoa,
it was one heck of a trip.
I'm sure.
I am still processing, I think, but there's some of that in the book. I talk about how I funded, I was broke after college, but I found that when I want to do really big things like write a book, I set a date on my calendar of when it's
Okay.
going to be done. So I didn't know how I was going to afford to go find my family, but I put a date on the calendar and I did it.
Yeah.
So I ended up asking my community for recycled water bottles so I could deposit them for 5 cents, raise a couple $1,000, ton of water bottles and cans. Like I don't drink soda. So like I was asking people for their soda cans, and sometimes it was super nasty as people give me ones that weren't like clean. But it was for the cause, right? Like so I would just put a clothespin on my nose and just go to work. And um I just felt like I wanted to earn my trip rather than some people tried giving me money and stuff too. And I just like felt weird taking it. I
Yeah.
just felt as if I was able to earn my trip, it would just mean more to me.
Yeah.
Um, and I was able to go. So the ambassador of Paraguay actually called me because there's a newspaper article in like just a local newspaper, and he saw what I was doing, and they were doing a big push for sustainability at that time, and I think they still are. So he was really intrigued that I funded my trip with the recycled water bottles. So he actually granted me dual citizenship. So I had to go down to DC and get dual citizenship, and like a little cedula card. It's pretty much like a social security card, kind of like an ID
Sure.
card. So I got that when I went down there. He picked me up and like brought us to his compound, and we had like a meal with them, and his daughter kind of chauffeured us around because it's really not like safe there. You have
Right.
to be very careful. So she was like our tour guide kind of. And then I connected on Facebook with a lawyer down there, which could have been really sketchy, but I'm glass half full
Sure, sure,
sort of
sure.
person. So we ended up talking. He helped out a couple other people find their families, and this guy is literally a saint. He's in the book. He is a lawyer by day, and like by night, he's this like superhero that helps adoptees relocate with their families in Paraguay. So he does like the
Wow.
research on the ground floor, and he doesn't ask for money for it. So it's just amazing that there's people that exist in the world that do something so selflessly, like for the good of their country. Like he literally wanted people to that were Paraguayan to see their roots and to see how beautiful the country is and to have a connection because he said he could only imagine what that would feel like. So
Sure.
strangers, it's just crazy to me that someone would help dozens of people.
So he's definitely got a halo reserved for him.
Oh yes, oh yeah.
Love when you find, like-minded, fabulous people like that. Just, all they want to do, the selfless folks like who just want to help people to help people. I mean, that's
It gives me faith in humanity in the future. The trip was crazy. We had to go outside of Asuncion, the capital, and there's chickens walking around, like horses. It was bizarre. I felt like I was in another dimension. And it was crazy. And we get there. My aunt said she wanted to meet me, so the gentleman had to go up and his name's Daniel, my angel. He went up and said, "I have this woman who says that she's your sister's daughter. She's from the United States. Would you like to meet her?" And she said yes. I went in and I knew it was my aunt. We looked similar. She looked very weathered, like very indigenous. And it was just so crazy to look at someone that was family because I never experienced that in all of my 24 years. So that
yeah.
was insane. And then she had to excuse herself because she was bartering with a neighbor for rice. So she was exchanging yucca. They were trading. And I was like, where am I? This is, you know, it was just very interesting to see just something like so primal, right? Like this dirt floors and horses walking.
Wow.
It was
It
pretty
could,
awesome. And it was very
could,
humbling. All I could think of was, my God, I could be here. I could
yeah.
be living here.
And you'd have no idea what you were missing or what you were in
Yeah.
need for. I mean, really, you wouldn't. You just this is day to day.
There's been a couple times when, in like New York Times, I think does this like happiest people in the world list or something. I don't even know how they aggregate the data or who they pick, right? But
Right.
Paraguay's actually been on it a few times as having the happiest people in the world, and it just leads you to wonder why that is, right?
Yeah.
Because they're very poor people. It's a very poor country. It's a corrupt country. So what makes them happier than people that have more? Maybe having less is happiness.
I have definitely said less is more for a lot of different things. And I mean, just a simpler life. When you think about your times where you're around your family and you just focus on them, hyper focus on them and, your basic needs. And then the rest of the time you have to explore and enjoy, nature or relax maybe a little bit or dance and enjoy music or whatever. And I think I've read similar articles, and that's really what life is about: enjoying time with family, having a purpose, being fed, staying warm every once in a while. You boil it down to it. That's all we really want out of life. Everyone's
Yeah.
happy and fed, working hard. It does make you think about what we have in America versus other places.
Yeah,
Mhm.
it's also interesting to me because if we're so simple, why do we make life so difficult
That is a great
as a
untapped question.
society?
I don't know.
I forgot you're supposed to be asking me the questions.
No, this
Put
is
you on
great.
the spot.
This is great. I don't have life's great answers. I wish I did. I probably paid a lot more than what I'm doing right now. But
Well,
it's good to postulate those kind of questions. Like why do we make things so complicated when we know, like in our primal brains, that life should just be simple, time to enjoy? Why do we overcomplicate things? And I think it's just because we have deep imaginations, and that could be a huge part of it. And
yeah, no, definitely.
so,
One of the gentlemen, actually, he's the final chapter in my book. His name's Sonny Vaccaro. He helped kind of bridge the gap between Michael Jordan and Nike
oh,
uh, before Michael Jordan kind of became like the Air Jordans, the
Yeah.
Jordans. Yeah. And I met him in college because he was a speaker, and I was that nerdy kid that would go and shake the speaker's hand after and wait in line or give exchange cards. And I randomly found his card because I had writer's block back
Yeah.
in November, and I was trying to finish this up. I was stuck. And I go, God, I go, I need something. Give me something. Help me out here. Help a girl out. And I kid you not, there was 3 tornado warnings like circling my house. There was like one in Providence, one in Warwick, like one, I don't know, Newport or something. And
Okay.
I was, well, this is bizarre. It was a Saturday. My husband was working that day because on a like an Amazon job or some big project he was working on. And he was like, all right, we'll go hunker downstairs. He's like, I'm gonna just like burrow into like the more inside the office so I'm not near any windows. He's like, can take the boys downstairs. And I was like, this is crazy. And he's like, yeah, he's like, nothing will probably happen, but if it does, just get downstairs. And when I had moved upstairs to downstairs, I had jostled a piece of paper loose, and it had been from, gosh, like 12 years prior when I was in college. It was just a loose leaf paper that was stuck in another notebook, and it had random pink scribbled writing, and that was it. Nothing else on the page, not the name, not anything. So I ended up finding that, and after the tornado warnings went away, and I look at this and I go, huh, that name sounds really familiar. I Googled it and I was like, oh my gosh, I remember him because I was doing sports management for a little bit in college, and he came to talk about sports business. And I emailed him that night and told him the crazy story. And I said, listen, I'm writing a book. Would you be the final chapter for me? He called me days later. He goes, you got time for an interview?
Sweet.
Chatted for about an hour. And he gave me his 3 biggest life lessons. And it was just such a brilliant conversation. And one of the things that he taught me was that, as I mentioned to you before, I'm 99% I have some sort of ADHD because I'm all over the place. And it's very, I mean, even sitting here right now is like a struggle for me. I have to like, I'm playing with a paperclip right now.
You're
So,
doing a great job.
yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, so I asked him for entrepreneurs because that's something I've met a lot of entrepreneurs and they struggle with keeping their feet on the ground, right? Like they'd rather be a kite flying high in the air, and like these ideas are just can get overwhelming sometimes in your own head. I said to him, I go, what do you do? Because he's like that too. He has lots of big ideas. He's a brilliant guy. And he said, the ideas that keep coming back are the ones you need to pursue. Everything else is clutter. And it was just really, really interesting to hear him say that. He's like, the ones that you keep thinking about are the ones you need to remember and you need to act on.
Right.
He's like, sometimes they won't always be right, but those are the ones that you're destined to follow.
Right.
Don't ignore the signs. And
Mhm.
I thought that was really interesting. And then he followed up with a question, kind of like I gave you a question. He said to me, where do the birds go at night? And I was like, what? It's like, I don't know. And he's like, well, think about it. Think about how many birds are like, if you see like flocks of birds flying around, it's like, there's zero way that all of them make it through the night. Like predators, different things, like disease, sickness, old age, right? And you have all these birds. Like, think about all the pigeons in New York. He goes, I want to know where they go at night. Where do they sleep? Like, especially in New York. He's like, where do they go? And questions been sitting in my head for a long time. And I'm like, I don't know. I don't know where they go.
Roofs?
I don't know. I don't know. Pigeon lady? I don't know. Or,
Probably.
like Home Alone. But yeah, there's just I don't know, sometimes some fun questions to kind of ponder that you might never know the answer to. But
Yeah, the ones that keep you up at night.
right.
So, can you tell us a little bit about your business?
Yeah, so I own a marketing agency. We help connect the dots between our clients' brands, the communities they serve, and then the prospects they're trying to reach
Yeah,
through promotional products, which is my jam. So that's branded products, apparel, things like that. And we have a big community focus. So my thing's community marketing and strategic partnerships. So I
nice.
like to try to get my clients to either like work together when they can. So if one has an event, like I'll see if my other clients like want to be like a sponsor or be involved. And I help kind of bridge the gap for my clients to connect them with each other.
Awesome.
Um, I like to come from like a position of abundance as opposed to scarcity. And I just think that there's so much business to go around and so much money to go around. And people sometimes shy away from that because
Right.
oh, I have to guard this client or I have to do X, Y, and Z, or I can't work with someone that's doing what I'm doing. and I'm big on collaborating. So it's served my business well. I've grown it very slowly because I've been raising my boys. So that's always been a challenging thing to navigate. My desire to be this rock star professional that's jet sent across the country for meetings and doing different things, and the desire just to be like hunkered down and snuggled up with my boys on the couch on a Friday night. So
Yep.
it's been a struggle the last few years, just trying to balance my desire, to be this like cutthroat CEO and make appearances, and then also wanting to be in my jammies, be
Yeah.
antisocial. So it's been tough, but the slow route has worked for me. We've grown organically. I
Good.
just hired a designer,
Yeah.
and we give back to the community when we can. I actually made the mistake of giving away most of my money my first year in business because I did not have a sponsorship or community giving budget, which I
Yeah.
now
See, you learned. You learned.
yeah,
Life
yeah.
lessons. Some lessons hurt more than others, but
Oh,
you learn
yeah.
regardless.
Oh, yeah. I've made my share of learning lessons the last few years in business, and this year is going to be a big one, which is super exciting.
Cool, cool. So, I mean, you mentioned your boys and family life and business. How do you just go through the day and not lose your mind while you're doing all your cool business marketing stuff and
Yeah, it's
balance the
hard,
kiddos?
especially struggling with being like constantly distracted.
Hmm.
I've found different tools to keep me on task. I have no one else is gonna be able to see this, but I'll show you.
Yeah.
I have a jar that I fill with little, these
Oh,
are like
okay.
little magnet stars,
Nice.
or you could use coins, and I do, 15, depends on the day, right? If the boys are crazy and or someone's sick, it's harder to get 15, 20 revenue generating tasks done in a day.
Yeah.
So I've been giving myself a lot of grace the last few years. I try my best, and I've attracted the right people who respect that I'm mom first.
Yeah.
And I make it known that even with my clients, when they miss, getting me back something, or, they take a couple weeks to confirm an order, I tell them, and they're like, "Oh, I'm so sorry." And I go, "Listen, this isn't life or death. But I'm not going anywhere.
Right.
I will never go back to working for someone else. You can quote me on that. And I'm not going anywhere.
Yeah.
So if your kid's sick or if someone's in the hospital, like one guy told me that he's caring for his sick parents right now. So he's going through that kind of end of life stage with them. And I said,
Yeah.
honestly, I go, your parents are so much more important than some pens. Do what you gotta do with them, and people respect that. It humanizes the process a little bit more than
Oh
making
God,
it this,
yes.
all right, like what do you want to order? Like I don't want to rush people into making a decision because I feel that so often we're coerced into spending our money frivolously or unintentionally. And everything I do with my business is very intentional. And my
Good.
clients like that.
Good. And people can see through that so well. So, and I was in a sales job for just over a year, and I hate sales. I don't do sales well because I don't. When my mind was sales was someone who's trying to literally leverage money out of you to buy something so I can get a little extra on my check. And that's what I always saw sales was. But when I jumped into the sales job, their little thing was, okay, they're going to come in the store. You're going to say hi, introduce your name, and say, if you have any questions, I'll be back here. Like, that's it. That's your sales pitch. Like, really? Because if they want to really know more, they just have to ask the questions and you just have to be knowledgeable about the product. You don't have to do anything. And even better, you can ask them what their budget is and you can work around their budget. I said, that sounds like helping. I like that. And so half the time I had, families who had a couple kids and they just needed beds. It was mattress sales for about a year. And I'm like, well, how much money do you have to spend? We have like $300. I got you. Here we go. This is gonna be under $300. Boom, boom, boom. Now their kids had a place to sleep. They would come back because knowing that we're going to take care of them and not we're
Yeah.
trying to gouge them for 10 times the money that they can afford.
Yeah.
It's just not about that. It's about the people because the people run the business. The people come and use, consume when they have to. But when you have the humanizing factor there, I feel like you're just so much better off. So much
Yeah.
better
'Cause, I
off.
mean, why would you want to work with someone that you force them into a deal, right?
Yeah.
Because then there's like that resentment. And even recently, I just launched a new like marketing subscription plan. and where we handle a little social media, email marketing, and then a promotional product each quarter. And I'm
Cool.
trying to do either a 6 month or 12-month period for continuity because
Mhm.
that's key in marketing and in business is to have that consistency. So that way, when people need what you want, they remember you and not your competitor. And she wasn't interested because it was too rich for her blood. It was too much. She's a newer business. And I was like, yeah, that's fine. I said,
Yeah.
if you want anything a la carte or a specific thing, I
Yeah.
said, let me know. And if not, like, no big deal. And she just placed an order, for something smaller, but a client's a client, and
Yes.
my biggest clients and my smallest clients get treated the same. My highest employees, my lowest employees will always get treated the same. I
Yes.
I've seen too many crappy things in the business world. I was bullied at the
Happiness.
job I worked at, and I just want to do things differently. And my company's called Otra Way. I combine Spanish and English. And people are like, hey, isn't that counterintuitive to branding? Because don't you want people to know like your fresh marketing concepts or, something with marketing? And I said, no, because I said the right clients are going to find me. We're going to
Mhm.
connect. I don't need to flaunt what I do because I know I'm good at what I do.
Mhm.
And I don't want to work with everyone. I don't.
Yeah.
And people look at me like I had 10 hats, and I'm just like, I've worked at ad agencies before where we've had clients that are tough or not treating employees like right. I don't want to deal with that. I don't care how much, it could be millions of dollars, right? And that might sound crazy too, but I just feel like quality of life, a big part of that is like mental health and everything. And if you're in a job where you're treated like garbage, either by
Mhm.
like the leadership or by your clients,
Yeah.
why do you want to show up and be the most productive person? And how are you going to then leave work, leave it there and show up for your family and be happy? You're
No.
not. I want to work with unhappy people. I want to work with people that love my mission and coming to work every day and showing up for like the greater good of the business I'm creating. That's when you make the big bucks. That's
Yeah.
when you have more productivity. That's when you have, you just keep attracting more better and bigger things. It's slow to start now, but I know that that's like my vision. That's
It'll
my,
it'll snowball.
yeah. And then
Yeah.
I'm creating a legacy for my boys. So at the end of the
Mhm.
day, it kind of all circles back to them
Mhm.
and like the future of my lineage. So that way someday people can distant relatives of mine, my boys' kids or their kids' kids, can then grab this book and be like, this was the first entrepreneur in our family.
Yeah. Yeah.
This our mom came from poverty and was born into a dictatorship. And I mean, I got out of it through corruption, but a lot of babies were taken. I don't think I told you that. A lot of babies were
Huh.
taken.
Oh
So
my
the
gosh.
dictatorship ended 2 weeks after I was born. And my birth mother, when I met her, said that the doctors told her I died in childbirth. So she said I was, since I'm alive and not dead, she said I was
Clearly.
probably taken by the doctors because she kept all five of my younger
Holy
siblings.
cow.
So I believe her. I think she didn't sell me for money. And even if she did, she was 15. And I can't imagine, I'm not going to judge her. Whatever the case is, I will never know the full facts. But stealing babies was definitely a problem
Yeah.
back in the late 80s up till the mid 90s.
Wow. I
There's
had no
a
idea.
documentary on it. Oh yeah, after Stroessner's 35-year dictatorship, there was a lot of people profiting. I mean, where there's money, whether it's good money or black money,
Yep. Yeah.
there's someone willing to dabble in it.
Yeah, if there's a way to make a dollar, even if it's doing awful, terrible things like stealing children from parents, it's gonna get exploited somehow.
Yeah,
Unfortunately, that's the case.
yeah,
But the fact that you are doing what you're doing, alive and well, reconnected with family and have your own that I mean, and doing what you do with your book and your business, I mean, that is impressive is not a good enough word for it.
well, I
So
appreciate that.
you're very
I
welcome.
I told Patrick it's no big deal, and he said, yes, this is a big deal.
Good.
I just, sometimes when you're living your own life, walking your own path, you don't see it from an outside's perspective, right? Because you're just doing you. You're
Mhm.
just doing your thing. And when he talked to me and told me that this is bigger than you, right? Like this is something that can impact other people. You
Right.
could potentially, influence someone to change their path just because if they resonate with any of the things that you've said about being bullied. I was bullied a couple times in my life and
Mhm.
it sucked. And
Yes.
I just know that nowadays, younger people, it's happening younger and more publicly with social media, and I
Yeah.
caught the beginning stages of that on MySpace. Yeah.
Oh, MySpace.
Yeah, MySpace throwback. But yeah, there's just so many themes in the book, from identity to, like I said, bullying. I have an autoimmune disease that I've had the last 4 years, so I've been struggling to get that under wraps, and that is pretty terrible. Some days I just am so exhausted or have a little bit of a hard time functioning, and it's nothing will hold me back because I feel as though my five younger siblings don't have a quarter of the opportunities I have here.
Right.
I could walk outside and, well, maybe not right outside, but you know what I mean? I could go out and there's all these organizations to help for all these different causes. You don't see that in South America. You
I
don't,
can't imagine.
you
No.
don't, if you need housing,
Yeah.
you're living in a, you're living in, I don't say ditch, but you're living in
A
like the
shack
slums.
or,
I saw the slums down there.
oh,
And oh, because I ended up, I told you I ended up traveling down to see find my family.
okay.
And I saw slums in both Argentina and Paraguay, and it was just eye-opening. I just felt horrible for the people here because they were living in such rubbish and like feces. It was terrible. And I know that that exists here too,
Hmm.
but there's resources to help people. Like
Yeah.
down there, if you get born into a certain class or situation, there's no one coming to your rescue.
Yeah.
And then the perpetual cycle begins. And I've seen people here, and I have some of them in my book that have overcome that generational cycle. And that's why I think the beauty of the United States is that there's so much opportunity to do that if you just get out of that fear. It's really, it's just like a fearful mindset of the unknown.
How do you overcome that kind of fear when you're faced with it?
It was harder when I was younger. Ran away from like a lot of things that did scare me, like finding my family. I pushed that off, and I think as I got older and I lost my grandparents, the concept of mortality played a role, And when I met my family, I learned that my biological grandma died at 38 of ovarian cancer.
Whoa.
And at the time, I was in my mid 20s. So ever since I learned that, I wake up every day thinking I have X amount of years left to live,
Right.
just if I was her. And maybe that sounds a little gloom and doom, but that's helped me achieve more than I ever have. I achieved a lot when I was younger,
Yeah.
but as soon as I came back from South America, I ran for a political position and I was elected my first time
Wow.
running as the youngest and only Hispanic candidate. And I was the first Paraguayan American elected.
Holy cow. Good
All
job.
yeah, I came back and it was May. And I talked to a guy at the time I was about 25, I think. I talked to a guy on the board of directors because at that time I sat on two board of directors because someone told me, you do all these extracurriculars or you want to do these extracurriculars. You did them in high school. You can do that stuff now, right? And kind of fill that void. And I was like, oh, really? I was like, what extracurriculars are there for a 25-year-old? They go, you could be on the board of directors of a nonprofit. I go, that sounds legit. That sounds pretty cool. I said, how does that happen? And he goes, come to a meeting with me next week. And literally that next meeting, I went and they voted for me to be on the board because the guy had told them all about me and he invited me to the meeting. And it was a meeting pretty much to like assess me.
Oh,
I thought
okay.
I was just going to check it out, right?
Nah.
Support. I thought they were going to want money. I was going to support, the group. And then all of a sudden they're like, yeah, we're interested. We'd like to, accept you onto the board. Well, we can induct you next week. And I was like, whoa, okay.
Okay, sure, why
So
not?
my colleague on the board, when I got back, I told him, I said, listen, I'm not doing enough in my community. I go, if you saw what I saw, I could be down there. And I just said, I was hit with this realization that I'm not doing enough. In some respects, like shouldn't be here. So the fact that I'm here, I need to go hard
Yeah,
because my siblings can't,
right.
and there's so many people here that have the opportunity to do big things with their life and choose not to.
Yeah,
I feel like I can't choose not to because I'll be doing a disservice to my family.
right.
So that's why I'm big on the ancestry thing because I think if more people dived into that and understood the hardships that their predecessors
Yeah.
endured, I think they'd have a way different feeling, whether or not they've gone to a poor country or gone to like New Orleans to volunteer, Habitat for Humanity, or anything like that, whether they volunteer or not. I think knowing that information could maybe help more people just level up their lives a little bit
Sure.
and have more gratitude for what they have and what their ancestors created for them, because without them, they wouldn't have what they have.
That is a very strong answer. I love it. Probably lit a fire like crazy when you got back from South America. I can only
Oh
imagine.
yeah.
I can
But
only
when he told
imagine.
me to run for board of ed, I was like, can I do that? I don't have kids. It's like, okay. I was like, oh no. I
Well,
was like,
you've
can I
gone
do
through
it?
school too. You've gone through it, so
Yeah.
you know what
So
I
it's
mean?
so I ended up, I was like, yeah, let's go. Let's do it. And I interviewed everyone on the board, asked them like why they did it, if they enjoyed it, time commitment, all that before I took the plunge. And
Yeah.
I canvassed felt like a million houses, Democrats, Republicans, independents, unregistered voters. I got people to register to vote. I was just really passionate about it. I'm passionate about voting because coming from a place where there's a dictatorship, I didn't experience that, but I lived in it for a couple weeks before he got ousted.
Yeah.
And I'm very aware that that exists places.
Yeah.
There's places where women can't vote or don't have a say, don't have rights, can't, access education like we're privileged to here. Yeah, I was like, yeah, I'm going to get people to register who aren't registered. I'm going to get people to know more about what's going on
Hmm.
because 60% of your taxpaying dollars goes to education. I mean, it should. But if you don't vote or you don't care, it's gonna affect you in the long run. People would say, "Oh, like, well, I don't have kids. Like, why should I vote?" And
Yeah.
I'm like, "Do you have someone come to do HVAC on your house? Oh, I see you have an air conditioner. Like, do you have people come work on your house?" And they're
Yeah.
like, "Yeah." And I said, "Well, those people all go through school, whether in this community or the other. If you have terrible, education, terrible people educating young people, you're gonna have a terrible population. You're
Yeah.
gonna have people that can't read, speak to you,
Yep.
steal from you. You're not gonna have, because education's power, and I think that it's underestimated so much. I try to read a new book every month.
Oh,
I was
good.
successful last year. It's hard, right, to make that time to continue learning, especially after you're out of school, but it's incredibly important. And I was
Yes,
just
it is.
tell people this, and I ended up getting elected. Awesome experience. 350 hours of my time over a 2-year period, unpaid. So it was a lot of work, but it was for the kids. And I was on a very bipartisan board that truly voted on behalf of the kids. Really great community. And they're in the book a little bit because I just feel that other communities across the country should be tuning into what Wallingford's mayor is doing. He's been the mayor for 36 years. They've been in
Mhm.
the black for decades. He's got a nice chunk of reserve money for rainy day fund, and people always give him smack for that. And the guy cares about the community, and I think he's doing things right.
Good.
And I don't think he gets enough attention for it. And I was just very impressed, even though I didn't agree with everything. It's just a really safe, beautiful community that had it was like an 18% Latino population, which I loved.
Mhm.
And there was a whole organization that was the facility they were in were funded by the community, and it's called the Hispanic Community of Wallingford. That's where I was on the board of.
Okay.
It was, diverse, and I just feel, if more stories get told like that of people making good choices, doing good things, because politics has such a, grimy feel to it.
News and media
That
do
it's
too.
possible. I've
Yeah.
seen it be possible and
Mhm.
be successful, and I just wish that could be rolled out to more communities because, like I said, it's that knowledge, that education, that community vibe is what really can make things successful.
I agree. And I think if you have more stories and more people talking about the good that is being done, I feel like that will generate more of the same, more good
Yeah,
coming. Because if all you see is negative, bad, this person did this or didn't do that, then it just, no one's getting celebrated for what they're doing. It's a harder, people aren't going to want to do the good and do the work. People are somewhat joiners in some way, and they see
yeah,
people who are doing good, they want to go join the good. They want to avoid the bad, but they want to join the good.
yeah. It's
So,
like that video game I used to play. It's called Lemmings. It was on my computer.
okay,
It was my brother's and I used to play it, and it was like these little lemmings, like these, like the animal. I think
yep,
it's an animal.
yep, it is
And
an
they
animal.
would
Yep.
follow each other off the cliff. So before they fell off the cliff, you had to build things like structures, and they'd all follow each other. And if you didn't build a structure fast enough, they would just all fall off the cliff. So you're trying to save as many lemmings as you could. And so sometimes I think about that in life. They've done these reality shows where guys will do things and it's like the test, like behavior test. So like one time they put a line starting randomly in the mall and one person lined up and then another and then another. There's no signs, no
Yeah.
nothing. And people just all start lining up. Then suddenly there was like a line of like, 30 deep people like just standing there. And people would be like, oh, like what are we waiting for?
Yeah.
And the person would be like, I don't know. And then they'd be like, oh, do you
Oh,
know what we're waiting for? And they go, no, I don't know. Must be something good. And it was just, it reminds me of that concept, that, and I know the concept monkey see, monkey do, people use that and got in trouble. But I purely think that's just like a cliche thing where we all want to be connected.
hmm
We all want to be a part of it. Like this FOMO thing, like I think that the concept of monkey see, monkey do purely means that we want to be part of something bigger. We're grasping for anything possible to be a part of a group, whether that's like racially, right? Like I remember in college, we'd have all the jocks would sit together, right? Their teammates, and then we had a handful of like Hispanic students. They'd all sit together at one table and speak Spanish, and it felt like college. It was a small private school in New York, and I just remember seeing that. I was like, it'd be cool if we could all just sit together. But people gravitate towards what they're comfortable with, right? What they know. And even myself, I find myself towards new things. I force myself. I try to make 5 new people a day. This is pre-pandemic because it was easier then. Now people
It
are like, oh, you
was.
get the sniffles, get away, or you might be
Uh-huh.
contagious. Um, and I still strive, to meet like 5 new people a week in person, face to face, because I know we're not close by, but like with Zoom, like it's just not the same as like seeing someone in
It's
like
not,
time.
but it's better than flying either way. Because you're in Rhode
Yes.
Island.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm in Washington. That's a flight.
It is it is it
Big
is a trek.
walk. So I mean,
Yeah.
this is great for what I'm doing. This is fabulous because I've met people from all over, uh, technically the world. Because I got one author who is from Germany, so
Oh, cool.
pretty cool. So, but East Coast, Midwest, West Coast, Hawaii, Alaska, all over the place, and it would not be possible with this. So it's a good social thing, Stu.
Oh yeah.
Chill, networking for like business, learning this kind of stuff. I mean, author stuff for me, it's been fabulous. But getting out in the community, talking to your locals who you could literally walk down the street to find, there is no replacing that. You need to have that in-person conversation, interaction. It's a well-rounded. You have to be well-rounded, I feel like.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Yeah.
Yes. So is there a book two in the future, or are you going to be doing like kind of revisions to this one and making that your primary mantle?
So I'm gonna be releasing like some habit trackers to go with
Okay.
the book, some like kind of supplemental guides. I'm also going to be releasing so there'll be a chapter on entrepreneurship, and then there'll be sub chapters within it. Some are about my stories, personal stories and lessons, and then some are of others that I've learned from,
Okay.
and then some that people that I admire. So Damon Johnson, I've actually met him before, and he's an awesome dude from Shark Tank, if you don't know him. And so his like entrepreneurial stories in it. I didn't include me meeting him because that was like a separate story in itself. I jumped through great hoops to meet him. I
Oh,
emailed
cool.
everyone on his website and I told them my story, and I was like, I need to meet him, and they hooked me up. So it was really it's really
That's
awesome. So
awesome.
that's why you never know if you want to meet someone bad enough, just keep at it. Or if you think someone is reachable, even though technically in your head they might not be reachable. If you convince yourself, I will meet this person, you will. And I know Tim Ferriss did something similar. So when I read Tim Ferriss's 4 Hour Work Week book, and he said the same thing when he taught his class, I need you to reach out to 3 celebrities, and like no one did it at the Cymex. Like, oh, like that's impossible. And then someone actually tried it and they did it. Like it worked.
Wow.
I've done that a couple times from this book. Former chief development officer of Subway endorsed the book, and I reached out to him on LinkedIn and was like, "Hey, can I grab a coffee with you? Because I have no idea what I'm gonna do with my life, and you seem pretty successful." Turns out he overcame a cocaine and alcohol addiction to help make
Wow.
Subway one of the top 2 franchises in the world. And now he's retired and gives back to others suffering from addiction to help them not make the same mistakes he made. You never know what people are going through, and I'm totally getting off topic, and I don't remember what your question was. Oh, is there a book too? Heck yes.
Okay.
Yes, I think
I
from my
love your I
stories.
love your tangents. They're
Oh my
actually
gosh,
they're actually fabulous.
I'm telling you, it's the I probably should be medicated. Um,
I don't know. I think maybe you'd be less productive if you're medicated. I mean, you're doing sounds like
maybe
you're
less
doing
exciting,
awesome
I
stuff,
think.
and you're motivating me now because I want to like I've got a few interviews I want to conduct with people who to me are just like basically Mount Everest and I'm in like the Marianas Trench. That, that's just that far apart from each other. So might just
Well, like
start.
I teach my son, if you
Yeah,
don't ask, you'll never
it's
get.
it's
If
an
you ask,
automatic no.
you might get a chance. Because sometimes he'll say, "Mom, can I have a lollipop?" And I'll be like, sometimes I'll say no, and he'll be like, "But I asked." And I go, "Yeah, you tried." And I go, "Just because you try doesn't mean you always get it. But if you don't try, how would you know if I was gonna say yes? You
Yeah,
know, you could have had your lollipop." And I was like, "Keep asking." I was like, "I
keep
admire
asking.
your questions and your bravery to ask, right? Because asking and starting are the hardest things to do.
So hard.
But once
Oh,
you do it, then it's just, balls out of your court and
yeah,
you done your part. And if it's meant to be, it'll happen. So yeah, go for it. I
I
don't know if you,
love it.
yeah, book 2 is going to be on leadership.
Cool, cool.
Not ready yet because I don't feel that I am as established yet in my business and my career.
Mhm.
Even though I'm running a business, I'm learning every year, every day, something new, something, I'm improving myself. So that probably won't come out for another 5 to 10 years.
Okay, well,
I
and
think
that's
I'm
okay.
really starting to compile who will be in it, and I know there's going to be a ton of amazing people that I'm going to meet along the journey. So yeah, stay tuned for that. But for now, just the supplemental things, the questions at the end of each sub chapter. There's questions, so I'm going to pull those out all out into one
Okay,
supplemental document, so people can use that to kind of journal prompts and writing. Or if someone doesn't want to buy the book, but they're curious to know what these kind of leveling up questions and reflection questions are, they can just buy the supplemental guide that has the questions.
whenever that happens, you get your second book out there, and it's making you all the millions of dollars, so you can give back to communities and whatnot. Hit me up for an interview because I'd love to talk to you again.
Of course, the psychic did tell me that number one is my trial kind of. This is more so my reflection for me and like to give to my family, but the number two is my biggie. It has to be like really special and really good because
Well, awesome. I think this one could still still be a biggie for you, regardless. I think two will definitely elevate a little more, but you got to have a jumping off point. Keep raising that jumping off point.
exactly.
So at the end of the day, what is your goal with learning as a lifelong journey? What do you want people to learn from it?
That no goal is too small. I think that everyone's version of success and vision for their life is different, and subscribing to other people's vision or mission, you got to do what's best for you. And even having little goals can help you lead a really successful life and a fulfilling life. Because I think that's what it comes down to. Not these like grandiose, owning a jet, owning this. I think we've deviated so far
Yeah.
from the meaningful things that should be priority to us. And people have lost kind of their own sense of identity in this digital world where we're trying to be, in many cases, and I've done this too, something that I'm not. And I think when you really tap into who you are as a person, what you want for your life, and just start achieving these smaller goals, it like builds up and compounds into this beautiful like life. And yeah, so that's pretty much it. Like one day, one step at a time, one little goal
Mhm.
can build into a really awesome life.
Yeah, that's kind of what I've gathered just from our conversation. What little bit I've read from your book already. But that's a beautiful answer. Thank you for answering. And then I know everyone's chomping at the bit, but where can they get a copy of your book?
Sure. It's on Amazon.
Okay.
And it's also barnesandnoble.com, and then, or I think it's bnn.com. I'm not sure what their
Yeah, I
website
think
is.
so.
And then amandamatola.com if you want a signed one
Do
from
that
me.
one. Do that one.
I'll
People.
throw a little note in for you, and you could check out my mailing list if you just want to get some inspirational stuff. And I do some coaching as well, which is fun, especially if you're an entrepreneur or want to be not want to be an entrepreneur. I think you're born that way. If
Mhm.
you want to start a business, it can be scary, but sometimes you just got to take that leap. So
You
if you
do.
need some, a little kick in the
Uh-huh.
pants,
Awesome.
I'll do it in the
Awesome.
gentlest way. I
Yeah, in
promise.
the gentlest way. Just kind of, Spartan kick you off the edge.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Anyway, Amanda, this has been wonderful. Thank you so much for coming on and taking time out of your insanely ridiculous schedule that you're seeming to manage quite well, if at least an outsider looking in. Let me know if you want to do this again.
Sounds good. Thank you so much.
All right. All right, everyone. I hope you have a fantastic day. Get a copy of her book and get reading. Okay. Get reading. All right. Have a good day, guys. Are you an author? Do you know someone who is? If so, then message me, Ryan Oliver, at ryanmoliver.com to set up a free appointment to discuss being showcased on the Mighty Books podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe to the Mighty Books YouTube channel and share the link to this and more episodes with your friends and family. Thanks for listening. So long for now. Stay mighty and keep reading.